Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffin. Welcome to our 171st installment of the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Tzav. Now, Parshas Tzav speaks a lot about the sacrifices, right? Speak about a burnt offering, speak about a meal offering, speak about a guilt offering, and all these different types of offerings. At the end of the parsha, it says chapter 8, verse 35. Torah tells us, at the entrance of the tent of meeting shall you dwell. Day and night for 7-day period you shall protect Hashem's charge, so you will not die. For so have I been commanded. Right? So you're going to go to the tent of meeting. That's where you're going to dwell. You're going to be there for 7 days, talking to the Kohanim. And you're going to protect Hashem's charge. See what that means. So you do not die, as I have commanded. Yeah, so the Talmud tells us, Talmud explains what this means. Right? The Talmud tells us that the reason you're going to stay away from this, right, meaning you're going to be there 7 days. 7 days, so you don't die, in order that you don't become impure. Right? A person becomes impure, you're in trouble. Right? Either you become pure, or a person's wife becomes impure. Right? She becomes a nida, she becomes impure. Says the Torah over here. It says this is the guarding. This is the guarding of God's guarding. Right? Because what does it say over here? It said you should guard. How do we translate it here? You should guard. Protect Hashem's charge. So you will not die. It's like a guarding of a guarding. Right? So what does that mean? It means, says Mori Rebbe, Harav Agon Ramosh Machslita should be well. Brings down in Tam V'das, in his commentary on Chumash, and he says that all the decrees of the rabbis, what about these decrees? Right? All these decrees, he says, are for the sake of guarding the Torah. So we'll explain that in a second. What does that mean? It means that you should guard yourself, you don't become impure. Your wife doesn't become impure. In order that what? In order that you don't die. And that's how it's measured over here. Why? Because he says, everyone who goes against the words of the Chachamim, anyone who goes against the words of the rabbis, and the decrees that the rabbi said, liable for the death penalty. You got to uphold what the rabbis tell us. Mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. You don't listen to them, you're liable for the death penalty. This is what we see by the Jews of all generations. That tremendous self-sacrifice that the Jews kept what the rabbis told us. Because the rabbis made a fence around the Torah, and the Jews kept what the rabbis tell us. And he heard, says my Rebbe, he heard from one great rabbi. He says that through the fact that our forefathers were stringent on themselves more than what the Torah said, they're going to say, but aren't they adding to the Torah? No, they made a boundary. Right? They made a boundary around it. By making a boundary around it, they're stricter than the Torah. And he said because of that, they merited tremendous things. Tremendous things in their life. Right, we'll get back to that. But let's hit the first thing first. That all the decrees of the rabbis are there to guard Torah. Now, what is the claim by the Karaites and others who want to deride the rabbis? And they'll say all the decrees they made are for the sake of what? Or for the sake of adding on to the Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu himself, right, says in the book of Deuteronomy, right, that God tells him, give over the Jewish people and say, you're not allowed to add to the Torah. You're not allowed to add, you're not allowed to subtract. What's going on here? How can they make a fence around the Torah? And the Rebbe here points out, you don't listen what the rabbis say, you're liable for a death penalty. So it sounds very good. Right? It sounds like we're going to make our laws. You have to follow them. And if you don't listen to us, you're going to die. Upmanship. Right? That's what it sounds like. But what's really going on here? So over here it says you have to go to the tent of meeting 7 days and nights. And you got to guard the garden. You got to keep what it says. The guardian of the garden over here means you stay away from things that are going to make you impure. Otherwise, you can't come into the tent of meeting. Or that your wife became impure and you were with her. So the Torah is warning us, the rabbis tell us. Don't fall into the trap. Don't make yourself impure. Because you're going to have major issues over here. So the rabbis want to guard ourselves from it. And the rabbis tell us, don't do it lest you die. So they make a fence around the Torah. Because if you go into the tent of meeting like that, and it's a warning you shouldn't die, so you got to be careful. So now if a person's careful, and a person's even more stringent than what the Torah says, they don't want to become impure. They don't want their wife to become impure. Isn't that a good thing? They don't want to transgress the Torah. They don't want to come to a severe prohibition. Maybe they'll be liable, like over here, for the death penalty. But aren't you going to ask, how can they do that? What's their power? How do they have the right to uproot what it says in the Torah? So if they're making a fence around the Torah, they're guarding against the Torah so something worse doesn't happen. Where do you see that's adding to the Torah? In the laws of Shabbos, many rabbinical laws, right? There's an Av and a Tolda. There's a Torah prohibition, an Av, which is similar to what was done in the Mishkan. Remember, there's a juxtaposition of the verses. In many verses, the Torah talks about in the book of Exodus, building the Mishkan, all the loops, all the boards, etc. In the middle it says, do not desecrate Shabbos. They have to keep Shabbos. Ma Kesher. What's the connection? So rabbis learn out anything done the Mishkan, anything that was done the tabernacle does not supersede Shabbos. And that means it's forbidden on Shabbos. So the rabbis learn that anything that was similar to a Torah prohibition, we're going to forbid it to make sure you don't transgress something worse. Because it's a Torah prohibition, everything else that's similar to that, it'll be forbidden d'Rabbanan. Be forbidden according to the rabbis. Now, how do they have the power? If the Torah tells me one thing, how can I sort of go around that? And the answer is this goes hand in hand. We mentioned many times, but I know sometimes I see it jarts out at me, want to discuss it again. And I think it's very simple. Anything similar to a Torah prohibition, the rabbis forbade. They forbade it to make sure you don't come to a more serious transgression. So therefore, if it's similar, person may forget about Shabbos, he may desecrate it. You're not going to remember. So the rabbis come and tell us, anything similar over here to a Torah prohibition, whatever was done in the Mishkan, whatever was done in the tabernacle is forbidden. And again, because it's similar. That is not adding to the Torah. Adding to the Torah, let's make clear, it's like adding another tzitzis. Instead of having 4, you have 5. Right? 4-quarter garment, you have 5, 6. Or adding different compartments in tefillin. in phylacteries. There are 4 compartments, you add another one. Or you take away another one. That's adding or subtracting. That's what the Torah is talking about. If I make a fence around the Torah, and you make precautions lest you come to a Torah prohibition, you're making a fence around the Torah. Now, making a fence around the Torah does not mean I'm changing anything. What we're saying is anything similar, in this case, to what was done in the Mishkan, forbidden. You might forget it's Shabbos. You might think it's okay, you won't enjoy Shabbos. What about the laws of kashrus? What about the fact you have to have separate dishes, milk and meat? And because they're separate, we'll have separate utensils, separate silverware, cutlery, depending where you're from, to make sure nothing gets mixed. You tell me, the Torah only says don't cook a calf in its mother's milk 3 times. Right? In order to teach you, once it's forbidden to cook it, even if you don't eat it. One time it's forbidden to eat it, and the other is for benefit. What does it tell me? What does the Torah tell me about separate milk and meat? It doesn't tell me anything. Come on, the rabbis and say, milk and meat is forbidden. So we want to make sure you never transgress. We want to make sure you're never going to use something that's milk, that's been used for milk, use it for meat. You don't want to use the same things. You mess them up. They'll need to be rekoshered. So you have separate things for each one. Separate pots, separate pans, separate utensils, separate cutlery, glasses. Because I never want to make the mistake and eat milk and meat together. So these are rabbinical in nature. True. But the rabbis came along and said, similar to the laws of Shabbos, I don't want you to transgress. I do not want you to come to a worse transgression, i.e. a Torah prohibition. That'll be the reason that chicken and milk is forbidden. Because what's the Torah prohibition? Kosher milk, kosher meat, put them together, cook them together. That's the Torah prohibition. Right? It'd be non-kosher meat. It'd be kosher, let's say kosher meat and non-kosher cheese. Or vice versa, rabbinic prohibition. But what about chicken? Is chicken called meat? Chicken is called meat. If chicken is called meat, am I allowed to mix chicken and milk? Chicken and cheese? And the answer is, rabbis tell us it's forbidden. Oh, they're adding to the Torah, someone's going to say. How are they allowed? It's only milk and meat. Well, isn't chicken meat? You'll say chicken is foul. But it's also meat. Come on, the rabbis, and tell us. We do not want to permit chicken to be cooked with cheese because you might forget. You might forget what the Torah prohibition is. What's the Torah prohibition? Meat, i.e. red meat. Red meat's a Torah prohibition. Chicken is rabbinical. But if I think chicken is okay, and I would permit chicken and milk or chicken and cheese, then I might forget and say meat, red meat and cheese or milk is okay. This is a guarding, right? This is what the Torah tells me. It's a guarding lest you don't die over here. So not everything you're going to die for. But the rabbis come and make a decree. They say you're not allowed to eat chicken with meat or cheese. What's the reason? I may forget and I may think it's only chicken and meat and it's only meat and cheese that's forbidden. Chicken and cheese will be okay. That's not adding to the Torah. Let's make clear. Adding to the Torah is adding something to the mitzvah. I make an extra tzitzis, or I take away an extra tzitzis. I add a compartment into tefillin. Making a fence around the Torah so I do not transgress. Or let's say better, so a person will not transgress a Torah prohibition. The fence around the Torah means I want to be extra careful. And being extra careful saves me from a worse prohibition, a worse transgression. So where do you see over there? That's adding. That's not called adding to the Torah. That's protecting the Torah. So you tell me, okay, what you're saying is semantics. But the reality doesn't matter how you say it. You're adding to the Torah. So again, let's make clear. Making a fence around it so I don't transgress something worse. We're guarding the Torah so we can keep it so we don't make worse transgressions. If I add or subtract from the mitzvah, that is a Torah prohibition. That I'm not allowed to do. Doesn't matter how many laws the rabbis add, right over here. How many fences they make. Because the reality is the fences that they make don't matter. What they're doing is to protect us. They're doing so we don't transgress something more severe. Now you tell me what I have to listen to the rabbis. Who are the rabbis? Right, we mentioned a number of times that there's a mitzvah to listen to them. You see over here, otherwise you're liable for a death penalty. But the idea over here is, let's make clear. The rabbis we're talking about, they weren't just stam guys. They weren't just, general guys who say, wow, they're really smart. They were really bright. But there are things they say. It's not just makes them bright. What it does, it singles them out as being better, being greater than others. Now, a lot of the rabbis, time of the Talmud, had the ability to bring people back from the dead. That's how great they were spiritually. Only problem is the generation they lived in was not worthy. Right, this is the case of many of the great assembly. Right, if you go to the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, at the very beginning, of Ethics of Our Fathers tells us that God passed all the Torah, the entire Torah, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu gave it over to Yoshua, gave it over to Joshua, gave him everything. Joshua gave to the great men of great assembly. At that point, they couldn't hold all the Torah inside of them. It was too much. So they had to give it over to others. Right? They certainly had to give it over to others. They couldn't take all that information. So they used different chains to pass it down. But the men of the great assembly, they're the ones who instituted prayer as well. So people ask, can't I say my own prayers? Why do I keep saying the same prayers over and over again? Okay, add things for Shabbos, add things for festival. Good. So my answer always is, and it will be this way also, and that is, these people, quote unquote, these great men, these very intellectual men, they had the ability to bring people back from the dead. If they had the ability to bring people back from the dead, then in my humble opinion, who am I to argue? If they tell me this is what I have to pray, that's what I have to pray. If they tell me this is what I shouldn't do, that's what I shouldn't do. I have to lay myself down, put myself on the line, and accept what they tell me. Now, for some people, that's very hard. Because if you're coming out of Christianity, out of paganism, whatever, say, listen, we had our rabbis. We had our rabbinic scholars. And they lied to us. They duped us. So why should we listen to any mortal man? Just like these people lied to us, who's to say they're not telling the truth? Or to say, sorry, they are telling the truth? Legitimate question. But you have to understand one thing. God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. When He gave the Torah to them, He gave the general laws. But if you look at the Torah, you read it from cover to cover. I highly recommend it. Read it from cover to cover. When you read it from cover to cover, many verses do not make any rational sense. They don't make sense to us. Why? Because we're missing information. If we're not given information, then how do I know what to do? And it can't be I'm just allowed to do what I want and I'll wing it. Because the Torah says if I don't get this right, I die. Torah says by Shabbos, similar thing. You'll die in this world, and you die in the next. You won't have a portion of the world to come. You get spiritually cut off. Corporal punishment and spiritual death. So if it's all about what I do, and a person wants to blow it off and say I can do what I want, I have to take the Torah literally. Right, for all those Karaites out there. If that's the case, there are many things that we will not understand at face value. Right? Probably more than 80% of the Torah, without a running commentary, makes no sense. Because there are a lot of details missing. Torah tells me I have to sit in the sukkah. I have to dwell in the sukkah 7 days. Very nice. What's a sukkah? How big? Does it have walls? Does it have a roof? What is it? What does it look like? Not only that, I have to take palm fronds, nice smelling fruit, willows, and myrtle leaves. Is there a specific size? How many? What is a nice smelling fruit? You tell me it's a quince, someone tells me it's a pomegranate, someone tells me it's a peach, a plum. Who's going to say it's a lemon on steroids? There's no definitions. Now to bring it in front of God, no definitions. The Torah begs for an explanation. So Moshe Rabbeinu gets the Torah. He got all the explanations. And the Torah got passed down. But eventually it had to be written down. It was only given over oral. That's why it's called oral Torah. Because the Jewish people going in exile, the rabbis are worried it's going to be forgotten. So what do? They allow it to be written. Because if it's not written, it will be forgotten. So over here, they're safeguarding the Torah. And if they're as great as we say, then we shouldn't have any issue. Because a fence around the Torah, the guarding of it, means it's not hefker. It's not ownerless. Doesn't mean I can do whatever I want. Because the Torah doesn't give me definitions. Torah says don't kill. Very good. Now, does that mean don't kill across the board? You're never allowed to kill. What about self-defense? Someone comes at you, you end up killing them. Tried not to, but you end up killing them. Is that forbidden? You killed someone. That's murder. Say, no, self-defense is different. How do I know? Well, it's what my gut tells me. No matter what your gut tells you. What does the Torah tell you? Where do you draw the line? How do I know how to draw the line? What's a nice smelling fruit that I take with my lulav? Can't be do whatever I want. I need a definition. Because what happens if I pick the wrong thing? What happens if I decide, you know what? I'm going to take a lemon. I'm going to take a quince. Maybe according to that, that's good. Now I fulfill my obligation and it's over. But how do I know it's right? It doesn't tell me how to do the mitzvah. It says bring it in front of God. So good, what do? So let's say I get it right, I go to the Beis HaMikdash. Right, I go to the temple. Bring it in front of God. So I lay it down there. In front of the altar. Is that what it means? What do I do with it? Am I supposed to shake it? In what order? And how? There's no definition. So if they give me instructions in what the mitzvah means, why should I say they don't know? I don't have anything else to tell me. So a person will say, well, my interpretation is just as good. But you're going to have to come up with a lot of information. You're going to have to come up with a lot to know and a lot to give over that it should make somewhat sense. And more importantly, you can pass that down to the next generation. It's also part of the criteria. Because if I'm a Karaite and I wing it, and I say I think it's like this or I think it's like that, my answer is, even if you think it's true, let's say it is. Is it possible I could pass that information down to my kids? And they can pass it down to their kids. And it's structured and all that. My answer would be, not in your cotton picking mind. Never going to happen. It won't work. See, you want to tell me it's like adding or subtracting, and you're going to keep what you're going to keep. Let me ask you the $1 million question. Does it work? And if it doesn't work, right? If it doesn't work, then what do I care what your philosophy is? What do I care you're going to take it so serious and only do what the Torah says? Where are your definitions? Where are your boundaries? And my answer is going to be, you don't have any. Because the Torah is going to tell you something. You say, okay, literally it means this is what I do. How does that work? Does it work? Shouldn't work. And if it worked on a big scale, the Karaites should be here. Should be thousands, tens of thousands of them. Where are all the Karaites? Even to tell me there are 1,000, 500, whatever. It's not something that's viable. It's impossible. First of all, it doesn't make sense. Second of all, it can't be passed down. So they'll say, we'll take the Torah literally. But where's your definitions going to come from? Someone's told me whatever type of sukkah I want to make, that's okay. But don't you think that's being pretty vague? You think the Torah's going to tell me, okay, I want you to make a sukkah, whatever you want. Just sit in a sukkah. Where is my place of reference? How do I have a place of reference? Now, you can't say that by Shabbos. By Shabbos, you tell me there are three things. Torah says explicitly. Don't carry, don't cook, don't make a fire. You say all these other categories that the rabbis added on, right, don't apply. There's only one problem saying that. I mean, there are a few problems. We'll mention one. The problem with saying that is if I don't get Shabbos right, I'm liable for the death penalty. So Karetz would say, I got it right. It's only these three categories. These other things I'm allowed to do. But if the rabbis are right, then if you don't do this, you're liable for a death penalty. If you're liable for the death penalty, the Torah has to spell out why you are liable for it. What action did you do or did you not do? So you claim that's adding on to the Torah. What's my definition? The Torah says, I want you to keep Shabbos, and if you don't, you're going to die, you're going to get spiritually cut off. The Torah doesn't say, okay, do this on Shabbos, don't do this. Do this on Shabbos, don't do that. The Torah always says three things I'm not allowed to do, but what am I allowed to do? Are there any positive commands of Shabbos? Could be according to the Karaites, they'll say, no, just keep it. That's great. What? Where? When? How? No definitions. If there are no definitions, you can't give a death penalty if you don't explain it. If you say don't kill, and a person kills in self-defense, it's the only way you can stop the person. You kill him. Well, they know that's not what it means. How do you know what it means? Well, I can take it literally. Don't kill means never kill. Ever. And if you kill in self-defense, that's not enough. That you'll be liable for. So the Torah begs to be explained. So therefore, come on the rabbis and say, we understand what God wants. We know we don't want you to come to do something bad, i.e. to a Torah prohibition. So they guard the Torah to make sure you don't do that. Also, they give you definitions. They don't just guard it, they tell you what it is and why. And they don't reveal all their reasons. So therefore, they're stringent and make this fence to protect us. That's my Rebbe here says, right, from one great rabbinic scholar, that was the merit of our forefathers. They were stringent on themselves where they didn't have to be, and they merited tremendous things. So by definition, them being the guardians does not mean that they're adding. We mention what it means to add. Here they're protected. And I would say if they want to be more stringent, why is that a problem? Because you say being more stringent is adding. But let me ask, if I know something's permissible, or let's say better. If I know something is forbidden, and there's something similar to that, but not exactly the same thing, the laws of Shabbos, and you want to be more stringent, and you want to say that's forbidden. Now, according to the Torah, maybe it's not forbidden. All right, something else is forbidden, but this is similar. So I ask you the $1 million question. And the $1 million question is, if I want to be stringent on myself, how is that forbidden? How is that adding to the Torah? Right, this great rabbi said, being stringent on yourself, they merited great things, our forefathers. We can also be stringent on ourselves, because we want to stay away from things. We want to make our own fences around the Torah. We're allowed to. That's not adding. That is not subtracting. That is protecting. If I know this is forbidden, and there's something similar to that, and I want to guard myself from it, why is that adding to the Torah? Where do you see that's adding to the Torah? It's protecting me from sinning. So they'll say, but when you say it's Jewish law and you have to do it. But it's protection. Protection of the Torah is not adding. And they want to make you stay away from things that are much more severe. It's come along the rabbis, guard the Torah. And you got to listen to them. Because they know a heck of a lot better than us. In so many different ways. And if you don't listen to them, you will transgress. You will come to a Torah prohibition. And that is certainly something we don't want. So I want to remind everyone to give a class on duties of the heart every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time. Speaking about the evil inclination, fighting against the evil inclination. I have a Q&A, question and answer session every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 in the morning New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. I do a class on Book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 o'clock in the morning New York time. And also I have conversion classes twice a week, Sunday, Thursday night. Anyone interested in any of these classes, you can contact me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Should everyone a great Shabbos!